Thanks, Dennis.
Okay, ready? Okay, hi everyone. My name is Megan Sobocinski. I'm the director of Grace in Action Collectives in Southwest Detroit. And I'll talk a little bit more about our model in a little bit, but we're a network of worker-owned cooperatives and neighborhood-based in Southwest Detroit. And I will give you more information very, very soon. So that's who I am. Thanks. It's nice to be here with you all and to meet you.
And I'm with the UW Center for Cooperatives, but I manage the Madison Cooperative Development Coalition, which I'll get into during my presentation. So I think I'll just leave it at that. And if you want to start screen sharing with your presentation, Megan, go for it.
All right, give me 1 second. Okay, I'm screen sharing on Canva, which I've never done before. So bear with me. Yes. Okay. Can everyone see? Okay, awesome. So as I said, my name is Megan Sobocinski. I am the director of Grace in Action Collective. So Grace in Action is a congregation and it's a nonprofit structured incubator that does cooperative incubation that also then is a network of those cooperatives. And so we are neighborhood based. Our mission, as you can see, is a network of collectives and worker-owned cooperatives rooted in the Southwest community. And our goal, so by 2030, so our board set this goal, we have a representative board of delegates from each of the cooperatives, and then a lawyer, an organizing director, a accountant, a CPA, and somebody who has an MBA on our board as well. And so our goal is by 2030, we plan to bring about 200 new cooperative-based jobs, raising the percentage of people both working and living in Southwest Detroit by 5%, having a direct impact on the Southwest Detroit economy by generating $10 million additional dollars, cycling through the neighborhood and creating greater community health or community wealth. So a very local goal of really impacting a community that is about 75,000 people in a particular geographic region of Detroit. So our model again of co-op development is neighborhood based, rooted in context. The context of Southwest Detroit is 68% Latino, 23% Black, 9% white. Most of the white folks are folks from the South who came. So the neighborhood is very heavily, it was very heavily built around the auto industry. And so the Ford Motor Company's first plant is in Southwest Detroit. It's right on the border between Dearborn and Southwest Detroit. It's technically in Dearborn. But Ford brought a ton of workers from the South, a ton of workers from Mexico, from many different parts, areas that came and worked in the automotive industry. So a lot of the folks in Southwest are like second, third generation immigrants. There is also a good number of new immigrants, as well as some white folks moving in who are who are moving in that have a lot more expendable income. And so that is just starting to change the demographics and sort of footprint of Southwest. So primary language is Spanish, secondary is English and Arabic. And then our model of co-op development has been built through nearly a decade of neighborhood conversations, as well as reflecting upon some great work and some difficult failures. It's a mix of high touch and low touch relationship towards cooperative development. And so we started more than a decade ago, really out of two reasons, two origins. So one, we were doing some community organizing in the neighborhood with young people. And as much as those campaigns were very effective and wonderful, they were young people were still waiting so long to see change, right? So there was kind of this idea that if you aren't able to put money in people's pockets immediately, people are still fighting without a lot of resources and a lot of economic power. So we wanted to figure out how to create new models and systems of income generation that would allow people to put money in their pockets while organizing. And so this led us to build the first collective that was a technology collective with young people doing web design. And it was more than a decade ago. So it was kind of when like Angry Birds, anyone could just make an app and put it on the like Apple Play Store or the Google Play Store, right? And so it was like the Michael Jordan of apps. We were gonna like make Angry Birds and just all get rich off of it, and it didn't happen because we had like little tiny netbooks. And so, but we, got some really amazing mentors, and young people learned how to like build websites. And that group is just actually now, after 10 years, they are just incorporating as a cooperative. So it's taken quite a long time, and I can speak to that too. It's really about, it has been about the learning, as well as the amount of learning that has to be done in order for the work to be marketable with 16 and 18-year-olds. So 16, 17-year-olds, 15, 16, 17-year-olds. So, and then secondly, there were a lot of women in the neighborhood that were doing piecemeal work for the auto industry. So a large factory had closed 10 years ago in our neighborhood. So Mexican Industries, it was called, that was a feeder for parts, automotive parts for the auto industry. And as it closed, it left a hole for jobs. And so what then filled that hole was a bunch of contracting jobs where people were paid for piecemeal work and paid poorly. So what then came out of that was a bunch of people being not paid, exploited, and being worked like super, super hard, like 30-year-olds with like carpal tunnel syndrome from really sewing the leather interiors of the cars. And so from that, we didn't know anything. We started researching co-ops and different models, economic models of what we could do to build like alternative economies that would allow people to be able to have work that was meaningful and non-exploitative. And so we ended up working with a group to build a first cleaning cooperative. And so that kind of became the beginning of the model, really out of the needs of the community, the struggle of the community, and the gifts that people had. And so that's our model of co-op development. So fast forward 10 years, these are the cooperatives that are currently part of the network, our network of cooperatives. So Bridging Languages is a new cooperative. It's language interpretation and translation. Radical Productions, they're just incorporating in the next few weeks. So that's the original. Mobile app development and web development. Stitching of Detroit is screen printing and design. Cleaning in Action was the first cleaning cooperative. Dulce Detroit Childcare it's decentralized childcare, so for events and then in home. And then the Equitable Internet Initiative is still not incorporated under Grace in Action, but we have a really good feasibility study and plan, which includes fiber, broadband installation, as well as building a tower and utilizing the Ford Motor Company's train station. The train station that they just started occupying, this train station, which is like a huge icon in Detroit, to be able to connect blanket all of Southwest Detroit with internet access. And so once we get that infrastructure locked down, they will be able to transition as a full worker cooperative. And we're looking into a worker cooperative hybrid utility cooperative model. So these are some of the today, these are some of the ways that we support the members. So we're a cooperative incubator, which means that we have an intro training, cooperative development process, which is about 6 months. It's really building the business. So the first piece is like learning about cooperatives. The second is building your business. And then the third is business incorporation and operating agreement assistance. So that's part of that, but we bring in lawyers and different folks. So we have a director of business and marketing who comes in and works with the cooperatives on their plans. And we have back office support that is part of the network. So once the group is interested in incubation, or we decide that there's an industry to launch a cooperative in, a cooperative goes through the incubation piece, then they sign an MOU if they want to be part of the network. And then that network allows them to have financials for 3 years, financial support. And that's like bookkeeping support, tax preparation support, ongoing legal support, and then they can pay in optional graphic design, healthcare, space rental. And then we give ongoing support. So meeting facilitation, governance support, business and marketing. And then we've got the cooperative network, which also involves additional training. So I talked a little bit about this. I don't want to get too much into the weeds unless people are super interested in this, but this is basically the model, what we provide. I already talked a lot about that, but this also is our, for full transparency, is our payback model. So this is what cooperatives then reinvest back into the network in order to receive all of those different services. And as I mentioned before, we have 4 different MOUs that co-ops sign off on that kind of details out what our what we provide, what they provide, and is just like fully transparent around all of that. I already did this. Sorry, guys. Why does it keep cycling? Oh, okay. I'm not sure why it keeps cycling. Sorry, y'all. And then this is what we provide, our network provides. So anyone can be a part of the network in Southwest Detroit, a worker-owned cooperative, collective, community-based enterprise in the neighborhood. All of the current cooperatives that we've worked with and supported to incubate are members. And the membership includes everything that I listed before, plus ongoing workshops on things like marketing, business planning, quarterly taxes filing, HR. And then also the network works together on a business plan and a marketing plan so that we can maximize relationships and work towards getting greater anchor institutional contracts. And then this is just a little bit more. We have a 4-phased approach that I talked about. The timeline is outdated. We've done it a lot faster than this, but phase 1 is the cooperative training. Phase 2, cooperative development. Phase 3 is when the cooperative is up, running, functioning. And then phase 4, the cooperative defines its role within the network. So those are the 4 phases that we have of cooperative development. And then this is just some work that we've done over the past decade. So we also, I remember why I put this slide in, because we also work then and train young people. So we learned very early on that if we didn't also include training in part of what we did, it would be very difficult to continue to engage people in the neighborhood as like with the skills to be members of cooperatives. And so what we did is Grace in Action Collectives, the 501c3, holds the training, meaning that we hold the ability to fundraise for the training. And then we partner with each of the cooperatives to develop the curriculum. And then cooperative members are paid to train on the work, and then they have their own operating agreements and new member policies that allow them to choose new members from those training sessions. And then that moves into whatever their new member policy is, right? So they have like skill tests that they give them, and other sorts of like agreements that they have before someone can become a member. So this is part of the work that we've done. So along with the cooperatives, we've trained over 2,000 youth in Southwest, created 52 worker-owned jobs in 6 industries, and then installed a bunch of homes with Wi-Fi. And we just did the first install. The Equitable Internet Initiative did the first install on the first pilot to the home broadband connection, fiber connection in Detroit this 2 weeks ago. And so it's going to be growing and growing, but it's super exciting and groundbreaking. So, and then here's just a few photos. This is Stitching Up Detroit. This was their launch party. This Radical Productions did a bunch of, we're like surrounded by incredible amounts of industry. So the Ford Rouge plant, AK Steel, and the Marathon Refinery, about to be 2 international crossings to Canada with insane amounts of truck traffic. So Radical Productions has done a bunch of work with tracking pollution, so air quality monitoring that allows, and then creating apps that allow neighbors to be able to track trucks that are in violation of idling ordinances, and report them, and then also do some sensor monitoring so that residents can monitor their own air. And all of this, and then working with legislators to create a collective sort of footprint around environmental just disgustingness, for lack of a better term, in Southwest Detroit. This is just a picture of the Equitable Internet Initiative, one of their installs. I think this was a hotspot this summer. And then here's a picture of some of the training with young people in the community. So that's the screen print. They do block printing, and then there's a group that does sound engineering and DJing. So then I put up some questions. I wasn't sure exactly where to go with this presentation in general. So I just put up a few questions for consideration. I don't know if these fully resonate with y'all, but if they do, take them and use them. But a few questions that I thought to just bring up is, where are the labor gaps in your local community? What gifts and skills do people have in your neighborhoods? Where are the opportunities for industry and growth? And then where have corporations failed people on the ground? What could this open up in local systems to create? And so for us, I mean, a huge piece of that was this internet portion, right? Like statistically 40% of Detroiters have no access to Wi-Fi. But with the pandemic, we really saw it was closer to 80%. And so figuring out how to create ways to really fill those gaps with democratically owned and operated, different, new, locally rooted ways of doing business. So that's what I have for y'all. Here's if you all want more information, but I'm happy to just generate a conversation. I'll go back to the questions page, but I would love to just generate a conversation with you all around some of these questions, like what is your context? And, what are people doing in your context? What do people want to be doing? And where are the gaps? So thanks.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, I hope that was helpful.
It was
Hey.
really helpful.
So I don't know if we're getting put on a stack or how we're going here, but I'll speak if nobody else wants to say anything.
Thanks, Chris. Unless you have something immediate, I would suggest maybe we get through both presentations and then have time for questions and discussions.
Okay, I thought she was asking for questions. So, okay,
Oh,
that's good.
is that okay?
Fine with me.
All right, I'm going to screen share now. All right, can everyone see that? Can I get a thumbs up?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So today, I'll just be talking a little bit about MCDC's origin story, or like kind of the context in which it grew, a snapshot of the Madison Cooperative Development Coalition, where we're at now. We'll talk about worker cooperatives in Madison, and then we'll talk about NCDC and the cooperative growth ecosystem using the DOWI and Project Equity framework. And then we'll talk a little bit, or at least I'll present to you the cooperative resource ecosystem map that the UW Center for Co-ops did, that Esther West, who's on the call, spearheaded. So this is a little bit about both my like personal story and how I think there was kind of space or openings in Madison. So like, how did we get our city to invest almost $3 million over 5 years in worker co-op development? Some things that happened, I think, in the 2000s really opened up those spaces and really brought issues of workers' rights and workplace democracy to the foreground. So in 2011, I know some of you on here were there when we had demonstrations. Our former governor, Scott Walker, introduced a bill that would basically destroy public sector unions. And when I talk about public sector, that means teachers, people who drive snow plows in the city, librarians, everyone that makes a city and our public institutions run. And so we had huge demonstrations that basically turned into an almost month-long occupation of our state capitol. So here you can see there's tens of thousands of people inside. On the weekends, we would get up to 200,000 people on the outside, and this is during a freezing February couple of weeks. And I really wanted to show this picture of Union Cab and their caravan like around the Capitol, and their banner says Cooperatives for Labor. So a lot of people just came together around the issue of workers' rights and building workplace democracy, and people really saw this as an attack on their neighbors and our public institutions. People came from all across the state. People actually came from all. So Cooperatives for Labor. And the other picture is a photo of me and my grad student union, the Teaching Assistants Association, watching the Daily Show about us at like 2 a.m. And then another picture, which you probably can't see because of the box, is me getting arrested for singing in the Capitol during what we called solidarity sing-alongs. And it was my birthday. That was a really interesting birthday. Good times. Chris and Jerry, did you get arrested during the sing-along?
6 times.
Yeah, you beat me. I only got arrested twice.
No worries. Who's
Yeah, I
counting,
got
right?
arrested twice too.
Awesome. Well done. Okay. So the mayor at the time was even sworn in for his sixth term as our mayor, Paul Soglin, and he got sworn in during this whole occupation. And then, in the kind of years after that, there was a lot of conferences and meetings and a lot of actions around workers' rights, building workplace democracy. In the union world and the co-op world, there's a big conference on cooperative businesses that people came across the state for. And this is Mayor Paul Soglin, and I show him because he learned about what New York was doing with providing municipal funding for worker co-ops. And he was like, we're not going to be upstaged by New York, $5 million over 5 years. Again, it ended up being under 3 after going through the budget process, but a little healthy competition between mayors was quite a benefit. And then just a little bit more context of kind of what was happening in these years as Madison, as MCDC kind of came into existence. We had a race to equity report that really showed the racial divide that we have in Madison. We consider ourselves like this big progressive city, but we are failing our Black and Brown neighbors, our communities, and our kids. Latino Workers Project showed the same, how vulnerable and exploited Latinx workers are in our community. And we had one of our biggest employers that was like intergenerational employers, unionized, solid working class jobs, pick up and leave. So we lost the Oscar Mayer plant that way. And I think I bring that up because I think people in the city, like economic developer types and stuff, saw the co-op program as a way to like retain jobs in our community. So I think it just opened people's minds a little bit up about why it'd be good to build worker co-ops and small businesses in Madison. I love this quote. Soglin says, all we were left with were the Wienermobiles. So, okay. So we are the City of Madison's funded initiative to form worker co-ops that address income inequality and racial disparities by creating living wage and sustainable jobs. We're a coalition of cooperative developers like myself and my colleagues at the Center for Cooperatives. We work really closely with the city's Office of Business Resources. And then what is key to our programming, I think, is our relationships with community-based organizations. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We provide technical assistance and education. I work really closely with the library to do Co-op 101s at the libraries. I don't know if Martin is on, but he's really key in that and has really been building more and more resources at the library regarding co-ops. We have a loan fund that is now going to be managed by Shared Capital Cooperative, which a bunch of you probably know about and are members of. And then we work with startups and conversions. So conversions is converting existing businesses to cooperatives, which you all know. But so before MCDC, we already had a good foundation in the worker co-op like ecosystem. MadWork was really incredibly important in advocating for this funding and making sure that it was employed well. So most people know and have heard about Union Cab. I just mentioned them and the protest pick. They're 40 years old. Community Pharmacy, another worker co-op that's over 40 years old, as well as Isthmus Engineering and Manufacturing, which you saw in the co-op tours yesterday, but many others. Nature's Bakery, Equal Exchange has an office in Madison. Just Coffee, Union Tech, which Dennis is here representing. And then the boxes are covering the Interpreters Cooperative of Madison, which is providing interpretation today. So since MCDC got started, we actually have doubled the number of worker co-ops in our community. So we're really proud of that. Common Good Bookkeeping was the first one that we started. And this is really important in thinking about a co-op ecosystem because every business needs bookkeeping, right? Raíces para el Cambio, or Roots for Change, is a co-op of community wellness workers and doulas that was incubated by Centro Hispano. So it provides those community wellness services in, linguistically and culturally relevant ways. They're all mothers and they're all part of that community. Soaring Independent Co-op is a Black woman-led home care cooperative. Nina Collective provides racial equity training and consulting. Get It Right Co-op is a co-op of educators and school staff. They work to start a public charter school called Milestone Democratic Schools to teach young people how to, take ownership of their own school and have participate in the decision making. Matcha, Madison Area Cooperative Housing Alliance. Iron Roots Cooperative, they're not open yet, but they're really close. And When they do, they'll be the first co-op restaurant in Wisconsin that any of us know of, which is a big deal because Wisconsin has a huge history in cooperatives, but we don't have a restaurant. So Madison Cycle Works, I had mentioned this in another session. They're going to do delivery by bike and then mobile bike repair. And then I'm bummed you can't see this, the Madison Cannabis Community Cooperative, which is going to process and then create products for CBD. And this is a really great example of building power along a supply chain, because one of the reasons that we kind of pulled folks together to start that cooperative was because the South Central Wisconsin Hemp Farmers Co-op was like, you know, we had a great crop, we're pulling all this together, but we can't afford to have our hemp flowers processed. It's too expensive. So just like in the same way that dairy farmers came together because all the processors had the power, so dairy farmers came together in Wisconsin to, you know, process their milk together, market it under a single label, you know, so just in the same ways that farmers built power through cooperatives, we're trying to do that along the hemp supply chain. And Jerry and Chris here are from that co-op, so they could say more later. Community Pharmacy is an existing co-op. We gave them a grant, and then Tone Madison is one of the conversions that we're working with. And we're working now with a union painters co-op and a cleaning co-op. And then there's about, you know, another 7 or so kind of like in the pipeline and in the exploratory stage. So one of the key stones of our programming is that we re-grant a lot of money. So it's a way to really move resources into the community. So we provide grants to cooperatives and development up to $10,000, and those that help like cover the like basic business startup costs. And that's really important when we're talking about trying to remove barriers to collective entrepreneurship for folks. So we've helped start 9 cooperatives. We've supported 2 existing cooperatives in tangible ways. There's about 10 co-ops in the pipeline. There's 2 conversions in the pipeline. And then we've also awarded $250,000 so far in community-based organization grants. And those are really key because we want organizations, you know, people who are on the ground, who are really engaged in their communities or in their neighborhoods, like Megan was talking about, to build their own organizational capacity to support cooperatives. So whether it's building it into their trainings, building it into their, you know, their incubators, you know, whatever it might be. And we can talk maybe in more detail about that in an upcoming slide. Oh, okay. I'm gonna pause for a second to share. Okay. I'm gonna share this link with you in the chat in case you wanna like look at this tool I'm using. And for each element, it really goes into detail about what they mean by those elements. So you could use this as a tool if you haven't already to look at your community or your network to see, you know, who have we not thought about? Who have we left out? Who could we try to partner with? So I'm gonna go through this fairly quickly because I've been talking for quite a while, but you know, skills and capacity, Madison has an entrepreneurial culture and a lot of educational opportunities. So it's ripe for collective entrepreneurship. Financing, I mentioned our loan fund, and we also work with Shared Capital as their own lender. Madison is a Kiva city. So if you don't know Kiva, it's a crowdfunding micro business platform. So you can actually, and it's a loan, it's not a grant. So if you loan through this platform to different small businesses, you actually get that money back, or you can cycle it and continue to support other small businesses. So it's a really good, awesome system. And you can do that for businesses in your community or across the globe. It's a really cool platform. And then I mentioned Ncdc Grants, and we have we're lucky because we have this like tradition of co-ops in Madison to have co-op knowledgeable attorneys. And we also work a little bit with the UW Law School and their law and entrepreneurship clinic. And we have a lot of co-op knowledgeable service providers, accountants, bookkeepers, etc. Cooperative developers, Ncdc, and the Center for Cooperatives. For business supports, there's the Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative Corporation, WIBIC, and we're working a little bit more with the Small Business Development Center on campus. We just got the governor to put $200,000 in the state budget for co-op feasibility studies. So this year, $200,000 will be there, and then next year again, there'll be another $200,000 for that. Capacity for P6 co-op to co-op supply chain connections. I mentioned the hemp example. And one thing we haven't quite done yet, or haven't done well enough, is to really work with anchor institutions to try to build co-ops that can service anchor institutions. We have really good state statutes in Wisconsin, so that helps co-ops incorporate. And government funding, so there's obviously support at the city level. And again, advocacy and partnerships with our community partners, government officials, worker owners like MadWork. MadWork is such an important partner in all of this work, and increasingly doing more and more. I know some of you might have attended the trade school session today. I mentioned the Madison Public Library, and there's a lot of other organizations. I don't know if Lauren is on, but she is from Generator, which partnered with Nehemiah. And they're going to do a co-op accelerator this year. And it's really cool because Nehemiah works with formerly incarcerated folks. And so getting them into the pipeline and then having them have that the really tailored one-on-one business mentorship through Generator. So if Lauren, if you are on later on, you could say a little bit about that. So here are all the organizations that have received grants thus far. So MadWork, Worker Justice Wisconsin, which is a great partner because they're a worker rights center. So they see those most vulnerable and exploited people. People come there for just because they're being discriminated at the workplace, or they're being wage theft. So having conversations about co-ops with those folks, like you can be your own boss, and then building kind of some co-op education into their workers' rights training, like that's a really fruitful relationship. For example, the Iron Roots restaurant grew out of that work. The Mutual Aid Network, Collaboration for Good, which is a social good accelerator program, and they do lots of other really cool stuff. I mentioned Nehemiah and Generator, and then Centro Hispano, which I mentioned there because they incubated Roots for Change. Here's a little bit more about the ecosystem. Value-driven businesses. Again, we have a history of co-ops. Attitudes and culture. Again, Madison views itself as a progressive community. And then, I think even more after the protests, the Wisconsin uprising, there was more of a attention paid to building democracy in the workplace, how important workers' rights are, and doing things together. And then cooperative education, the Center for Co-ops, and then all the other kind of education entities that we work with. And then this is a project that Esther worked on, the National Cooperative Resource Ecosystem Map. This is also another good framework that you can use to see what's available in your community regarding co-op development, co-op friendly associations, co-op financing, and the legal context. So that's a really helpful map. And again, Esther can say something during our discussion period. So that's my contact information if you want to chat. Okay. Sorry, I wasn't watching the chat while I was talking. It was too many things at once. So hopefully I didn't miss anything. Megan, do you want to like start with those questions? You want to use that to kind of kick off the discussion? And then Chris, you
Sure.
can chime in.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. I feel like I think that makes sense. I feel like that is very local neighborhood focused, and we can maybe like start there and go out towards connecting then beyond neighborhood to, you know, your presentation, Charity, which I think like integrates like neighborhood, city, state, you know, and like larger ecosystem. So, but yeah, totally. Let me find it again. There you go. Okay, so the questions, just the prompts that I put are, where are the labor gaps in your community? What gifts and skills do people have in your neighborhood? Opportunities for industry growth, and where have corporations failed people on the ground? What could this open up local systems to create? And so I heard that in your presentation too, Charity, around when it was the Oscar Mayer plant closed. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so I think particularly right now, I mean, this is a time where a lot is happening, you know, and there's a lot of places closing. I think people are very much done making crap wages for crap work. And so we have like a huge shift happening, I think, in both the labor force and in industry, and such a beautiful opportunity. So.
Well, and like Detroit's history of being abandoned by, you know, capitalists, right? Megan and I are both from the Rust Belt of Michigan, so we know the story well.
Yeah, for sure.
So can I
One
chime
question
in?
that,
Okay.
you go, Chris.
Yeah, Jerry and I are kind of familiar with that kind of an experience as well. We kind of went through something similar in the Hudson Valley when they decided to close a plant, and our jobs all just went away too. So we kind of know that experience. I was going to say though, a lot of those issues, I'm sure I could probably ask a lot of people and try to get some feedback about that. I work with a group called the Wisconsin Grassroots Network, and I think that they would be a great vehicle for trying to utilize to spread cooperatives more around the state. I know it's kind of up to the level that you want it to kind of keep it more local, but that's what my original comment was going to be. So I really didn't have anything like on my mind that I was going to say about those particular questions, other than I really loved your presentation. I love what you did. I think it's really something that should be brought up in the state. I'd love to be a part of it. If somebody wants to start what you did here, I'd love to be a part of it, because I think that it's a really powerful model. And I think that it is the base needed to actually be able to get the cooperatives all, you know, moving quickly, because I think that that's what we need. I think that we need to build up these structures of our own so that we can hold up the people and move away from that economy, instead of begging them to change the laws to let us be free to live our lives the way that we want to. So congratulations. I think it's beautiful, and I hope I could be part of bringing it up here if we do something like that. So Wisconsin Grassroots Network would be, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to help. We have a festival every year. We get an attendance of about 400 people. In election years, it's higher. And we get people from all over the state. So maybe we could connect at some time about training. We do trainings there. That's what we do at our festival, all different kind of trainings. So that's all I had to say. Thanks.
That's awesome. Steve, do you have your hand up? Yes.
Yeah, it's not really a question, it's more of a comment. I was really glad to hear that you've got an interpreter co-op started there in Detroit. I take it they're pretty new.
Yeah, they just started. They were fully incubated during the pandemic and just got incorporated in October of last year.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, that's very cool. Yeah, we actually got incorporated in October ourselves.
Okay.
But there is a network of 8 or 10 interpreter co-ops scattered around the country. Plus, I think there's 1 or 2 outside the country as well. So if you can put me in touch with them, I'll put them in touch with everybody else.
Nice.
and
I
maybe
will-
save them a couple of steps along the way.
That's awesome. I'll direct message you their contact. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
You bet.
I'm curious, and I forget if this is really answering one of the questions that was up, but it's something that kind of came up in listening to both of you guys present. Here in Minneapolis, the people I've been talking with, we've been thinking about, specific business ideas, and also seeing a need for, some gaps in the general, co-op support and co-op incubation ecosystem. And not really sure which is the chicken, which is the egg, where to start, as far as like, okay, so do we just start with a single business idea and then try to get more into the incubation work, or dive into the incubation work first, and also thinking about how the incubation work itself can, if it should be a worker cooperative. So yeah, I'm curious kind of to hear about like that, the order of operations piece, and also making the people doing the incubation work part of a worker cooperative themselves.
I
mean-
love that idea. Sorry, go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to the first part. I don't know if Charity, you want to speak to the second. But I'll just say, I think there's no right way to start. I think the right way to start is to just start. And I will say that there is so much that we didn't know when we started that we know now that I would have done differently. And I've done a lot of, thinking, changing, and like apologizing for some of those things, right? And at the same time, I think what you know, and you do the due diligence you can to like, not mess up, right? To like be culturally competent, be rooted, be grounded, right? And then you have to move, right? Like, so getting paralyzed is not helpful, right? But also making sure that you're doing your due diligence as much as you can, right? And learning all that you can. And so, I mean, we just started with one cooperative because it was the best that we knew. And prior to cleaning, we tried to start with food in Detroit. And at the time, right now, there's like an amazing ecosystem for food businesses. But at the time, there were no community kitchens, like there was no trainings. And so what ended up happening is we were like working with women who were street vendors that then put them at risk of being, arrested or ticketed. And so we like pulled back really quickly because we realized that was happening and there wasn't a lot of infrastructure to be able to allow people to build. Now that would be completely different. And when we pulled back, we said, what is an industry that people care about, that people have skills in, that people want to build, that is like low, doesn't have a lot of like capital, right? Like that doesn't need a building, that is, you would need very few resources to start. And that's where we came with cleaning, right? And so I think it's also like a little bit of trial and error, but knowing where your boundaries are, and knowing when you need to pull back if it's not working out, right? And in terms of, I think if an incubator should be a co-op, I mean, I think Charity's probably better positioned to answer that maybe structurally. We've thought about that. We've had those conversations. We're working on transitioning our staff to a shared leadership model, and potentially our board as well, to really like reflect more. I mean, we already are very collaborative in our like leadership style, but to actually reflect it on paper in an intentional way. But I think for us, the reason that we have remained a 501c3 is because of the ability to attract grants, and the tax you know, the tax reasons, right? Like all the tax purposes that, and the reason that we have partnered with cooperatives around the training. So each cooperative also has trainings that they do as part of their marketing plan. And then we bring in the community trainings because you can get grants for those. And so I think for us anyway, having a mix of structures that allows for a mix of different revenue streams to come in has been really useful.
Thanks.
I think you said it all, Megan. I would have said everything the same. It's like there's no right way to do it. We've learned a lot of lessons along the way. Usually it's just co-ops, whoever kind of comes to us, but the bookkeeping co-op and then the CBD co-op, Madison Cannabis Community Cooperative, were a little bit more incubated. And then, as I mentioned, Centro Hispanos work to incubate. And I would have said the exact same thing what you and Mike said in the chat about nonprofit versus becoming a co-op. It really depends on what your funding sources are and so on. So we have a couple of hands, unless you have anything else, anyone has anything they want to add on that subject.
Just to clarify, Charity, like the group that you work with, you guys are part of the like Madison city government, is that right?
We're like an amalgamous thing right now. We're on the last our 5th year of funding, and so we kind of just put the question of like, do we just form a nonprofit? Do we do this? We work with the fiscal agent or you know, for the money side of things, but we're not a specific organization. So,
okay.
But if we, knock on wood, we're advocating to get funding extended, and if we do that, then I think we'll have to come back to that question.
Cool. All right. Thank you both.
Thank you. Neural and then Jerry.
Yes, hello all. My name is Neural in Chicago, co-founder of Shy Commons Cooperative. First of all, thanks to the speakers. I was just wondering, you don't necessarily have quick journeys, you have multi-year journeys. Is there something that you can, advice you can give the cities that are sort of earlier in that journey?
Yeah.
You know, like either some lessons or ways to accelerate things, knowing what you know now. Thanks.
Yeah, when MCDC started, is it okay if I start, Megan?
Yeah.
When MCDC started, New York was the only other municipality that was like investing in this way and like really putting resources behind worker co-op development. So, you know, we learned a little bit of lessons from them, but we really had to like figure it out as we went along. I think having the time to figure that out, so having multi-year funding was really critical, because we could make the mistakes, we could learn from our mistakes, we could switch things up, we could pivot. You know, for example, in the beginning, we're only giving the 10, like because we gave the cooperative $10,000 grants, we were doing the same thing for our community-based organization partners, but we learned very quickly that $10,000 for a small nonprofit organization, you know, really out there in the struggle, it's not meaningful enough for them to like actually concentrate on this work and to put their own resources and their own time into it. So that's like one example of, you know, really being able to reform and change along the way. I'll think of something else, but I want to give Megan a chance to answer that too.
Yeah, I think I just think that we were really just so in the weeds and on the ground that we didn't really like we just responded, right? Like, I don't think that we did as much research as I would have done in hindsight. And I think that would have also sped up the process, because we would have learned a lot more. Like we learned from the people that were like willing to talk to us. But I guess I just wish that there were more people, or that we had reached out more, if that makes sense. And, you know, had done, I think the second co-op in, we started doing like feasibility studies, but we didn't on the first one, you know? And so I think really doing the market research, making sure that you're thoughtful in what you're building, right? And I think at this point we've come to a place where we build in 3 different ways. And I think this may change too, is the 3 different ways that we build. So we build in people's self-identified interests. We build in where the community really has gaps and needs. And then the 3 is like lucrative businesses. And so we always want to be like hitting on those 3 within the network. And as long as it's like within that 3 and we're not like always hitting on 1, if that makes sense. But that we realize that each of those 3 is really important to make the whole of the vision and the values that we're trying to bring about work. And so some of it, I think you just have to learn by walking the journey. Because even I've talked to Maru at the Center for, she's not at the Center for Family Life anymore, but she was, about this a lot, right? Like, I think we land a lot where Center for Family Life is, but some of it, like, we had to learn by walking the journey. Because even if I were to come in and say, this is how you do it, this is how other people do it, in order to like really gain that sense of ownership, like people have to walk the journey together too. And so some of it is just life and time and relationships, you know, and joint struggle and learning.
I will add one more like lesson learned. I think in the beginning, we were trying, you know, to really build this coalition, and we cast a too large tent in the sense of, you know, we pulled in people who work with, you know, organizations that are really top down, for example, or, you know, they didn't have any co-op experience, which is totally fine, but we didn't do enough internal education to kind of counter all of that. So being really thoughtful in the beginning about, you know, building it before things get too messy, and then, you know, forming those relationships and bringing people in. And I know that sounds kind of like, but, you know, learning from our lessons. Unless you have anything else to add to that, Megan. Jerry's hand has been up for a long time.
Oh, hi. Yeah, kudos to the presenters. Awesome discussion. I didn't have any questions, but I did want to address one of Megan's questions. Where did corporations fail us? I mean, I would have to say probably one of the biggest stumbling points is, well, where they failed us really is their hiring practices. I mean, it's not just if you have any kind of a blemish on your record as far as, you know, a crime or, God help you, a felony, but if you have bad credit history because of your spouse or something else, a lot of times they won't even consider you for jobs. So getting in the door is almost impossible if you don't have a squeaky clean record. And hopefully co-ops can allow more opportunity for people. You know what I mean? Nobody's perfect, and we all run into rough times. Like Chris was saying, we went through layoffs, and boy, we had great credit while we were working, you know, but when a plant closes in a rural area and you're out of work for 10 months with 3 kids in a house, I tell you, things get thin real fast. And our credit was crushed. I mean, I was able to get a job, but I could see where a lot of people would not have been able to survive what we did. And it's wrong. I mean, but I think mainly that's one of my big desires of getting this co-op brought up, because I want to see a little more equality. You know, a lot of corporations, and it doesn't seem to matter so much what you know. They want to just make you whatever they want to make. But if you don't have a perfect background, you're not even considered. And I think that's the big failure. That's the end of my rant.
Yeah. Alfonso, I'll give you a chance to respond.
No, go.
My bad. Alfonso, you're on stack. Oh, he's interpreting. Sorry, you had said Alfonso in the chat after Megan, so I thought you wanted to speak. Okay, never mind. Does anyone else have Kimberly?
Yeah. Right. I was remembering one of Megan's questions being about, what I think, something about what could the community use. And it reminded me, I think, yes, an idea that we've been tossing around that maybe like could be its own business and also like help seed others is the idea of like a third space cafe, a space with like co-working space open to the public. But I'm curious, based on your guys' experience, if that is actually a resource that young co-ops need, or not.
Can you say more about what is a third, can you say more about what the third space is? Like, what does it look
Sure,
like?
yeah. Yeah. So when I say third space, I think it's like an urban planning term that refers to like spaces that are not work or home. And so, thinking of kind of like creating a cafe, but that's also, a place where, that has the resources for people to work. So kind of a cross between a co-working space and a cafe, with the hope that like the cafe can help like cover the costs of the space. But then you also, so that you can offer a co-working space to startup co-ops. But again, that's just like us going on a hunch that might be something young co-ops need, and not actually sure. So I'm curious from your guys' perspective, maybe you have perspective on how, well, like whether a cafe co-op is a good co-op to start with, and also is co-working spaces something that young co-ops need?
Oh. Eric, I was gonna say, Eric, we can hear you. Like, no problem.
I can speak to that. I mean, I can speak to our experience of that. So I would say there's two separate questions that I would embed in that question, right? One is like, is there a market and a need for a cafe? Like, is there a market for a cafe, right? Like, who's asking for the cafe? And then like some feasibility work around a cafe, right? Like, so that's number one. And then separately, I would say in answering from our experience, how that sort of like space use or like co-working space or like having a space to work and co-generate ideas has been useful. So this is also interesting because of COVID, right? So 2 years ago, so Grace in Action Collectives occupies we're actually exploring co-ownership with the church, Grace in Action Collectives, and then some of the cooperatives, co-owning a building that was a former funeral home. And so that got donated to us. And we crowdfunded, renovated, and have now raised a bunch of money. It's Art Place America and various sources to really create a space that has been co-created with the University of Detroit Mercy, their collaborative design center. So we do actually have that kind of space that is our building. And so, and we have office space upstairs that is co-working space. And then like Stitching of Detroit's studio is in the old garage, but it's huge, right? Because it was like a funeral garage. And so it's a wild space, y'all. But yeah, so in their renovations, they're getting a whole storefront. And so they've designed their whole storefront that's also sort of dubbing as like they're curating a space for young people, entrepreneurs in Southwest. And so for young artists. Yeah, it's like a giant, this is what I would say. Some of the cooperatives that are part of our network need space for storage, and storage is a huge need. We don't have enough storage. We need more storage. Secondly, some need meeting space. Not many need like active working space. And so it's more like meeting space and storage space. And so if you're thinking about building something like that, don't underestimate the need for storage.
It's a great point. I want to give Alfonso the last word. We have 3 minutes left for time. Alfonso? Oh. Did he disappear? Maybe he was just having a chat conversation with Eric. And yeah, okay.
I think the
Esther?
interpreters were changing shifts, so they were just communicating with each other for that.
Got it. Thing, yeah. Esther, do you want to have the last word?
No, I'm good. I wrote something in chat, so I just.
I saw that. Yeah. That's a great example, Esther. Any closing remarks, Megan?
No, just keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Can I just say thank you for your presentation too, Charity?
Thanks for being here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
And I did quickly think of a need in Sun Prairie. We have our students now are going to be let out of the grade school at like 1 o'clock because we're switching the high school grades to going in later in the daytime because the high schoolers don't do as well. So we're going to have a whole bunch of grade school kids getting out of school at 1:30. I have no idea what their parents are going to do at 1:30 in the afternoon next year when our kids are getting out of school and they're at work. So that's a niche that's probably going to need to be filled here in Sun Prairie. I don't know where else, but for somebody that's an entrepreneur that has some energy, that might be something to think about, you know?
Yeah. Thanks for that update.
Take care by the hour, huh?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, it could be a lot of things. It could be a real opportunity for the right people.
Yeah, there's like 2 hours. Get a half a dozen kids. That adds up.
Oh,
maybe
one of
some
the,
good education and, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, one of the programs we funded that I forgot to mention, I must have left it off the slide, is we funded like a business planning for a second and third shift childcare cooperative. Because I remember really early on, Georgia Allen from who was one of the founders of Soaring Independent was like, you know, and that's the home care cooperative, was like, if we don't have secure childcare, we don't have secure employment. And for us, that's second and third shift, you know, that's home care is around the clock. And so, you know, that, thanks, Chris, that reminded me of, that was one project. You know, we haven't gotten off the ground yet, but the seeds have been planted. So it just needs a bigger investment from the city and other institutions. It's
Home care in general does. It's hard to get people for home care.
home care and childcare. Yep. Okay, well, I want to be respectful of people's time. So Megan, thank you so much for being here. And it was really great to hear about the work y'all are doing. So
Yeah, it was super nice meeting you all too. Thanks for everything. Keep on building. I want to hear about how y'all got $200,000 from the state as well.
okay. Yeah, just some advocacy. Yeah.
Okay. Deal.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll follow up.
All right.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. And I'm going to leave my Zoom open, although I'm going to go take a little break. But I'm going to leave it open if people wanted to talk with each other during that time. Okay.
Yeah.